faster. This is great for a review of the incident afterwards to try and improve. But if like in the example we gave before, if somebody's pulling into oncoming traffic, trying to dodge cars, trying to watch what's going on ahead of them because they think they see somebody in trouble, we want them concentrating on that.
Sure.
So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
My concern, like, would be that they weren't trained, like, they won't remember where it is. If it's always moving around, like, when you have to turn it on, it might not be.
That's true. My thought actually was, though, that just if there was a general suggestion, not necessarily policy, but a general rule that when you're driving, you don't have it on the belt, you have it in another location where you might actually be able to perceive something through the lens. But you know, because if you get in a situation where, for instance, someone's coming up to the car with a knife or whatever, you know, you're gonna. It's probably better to have it here than here.
Right.
So I mean, I just want to know how much you're looking at things like that to see if there are optimal positions in certain situations that would help those problems from being avoided.
There are studies being done by the IC, International Association of Chiefs of Police, by the Police Executive Research Forum. We're participating in a study with Long Beach State, Long Beach Police Department, and the Urban Institute in Pittsburgh, and everybody's trying to determine these best practices. And as a police department, when we examine the recordings, we take that into consideration. But at least at this point in time, from our police department standpoint, we like the diversity, but best practices as law enforcement gets better and better at using this tool will probably guide everybody towards what is the optimum location.
By the time you figure that out, they'll have it all in a contact lens.
Well, that would be really good.
That'd be great.
I'm just curious how much they spend on the storage of all this evidence.
You're right. That's the technology that it cost us $1.2 million to buy 250 cameras that included 5 years worth of storage and the technology upgrades. A lot of that is going to be storage, because I'm not a real technical guy, but I know we have 103,000 recordings, and we haven't even been doing it a year, and there's a lot of data in there, and it's going to grow. So our retention policy, we follow the city's retention policy. A minimum, the most nothing contact is stored for 2 years, right? So every single contact is stored for a minimum of 2 years. Anything, more importantly, that gets classified as evidence is stored indefinitely or forever. So storage is going to be an issue, but that's a long-term issue.
With the since the implementation a few months, from your perspective, what's the biggest thing that we've learned? And then what would you say the biggest benefit so far has been?
The biggest thing that we've learned is this has been a tremendous evidence collection tool, right? So for example, when I was a street cop, if I was talking to you, I'd be scrambling, trying to take notes. What did you say? Did I get that right, or I might miss something, right? Now I don't have to do that. I can just talk to you and ask you questions, and not only have a more accurate record of what you said, but I also get your facial expressions and everything else, right? So it makes our officers way more efficient from that standpoint. The other big benefit is in the criminal justice system, because if I'm an officer sitting on a witness stand and the defense attorney saying, well, Officer Marson, what do you mean his eyes were bloodshot? Could he have been crying? Was it windy outside, right? What do you mean he was aggressive? Or you're saying that he acted this way. Well, what kind of medical background do you have to describe that? Describing behaviors in a police report is not all that easy. Now, we can put the jury and the judge, they can see it for themselves and make their own conclusion. Again, it makes us so much more efficient and so much more effective as independent collectors of fact for the criminal justice system. That's by far our biggest asset with these.
Sorry, I do have a few questions on this one as well. And this first one is just kind of an odd one, I suppose. But So having a smartphone is getting pretty much required. Have you had any officers you come across that didn't own one?
I don't know if we have any officers that don't have them, but there are other ways to associate it, right? That is by far the most efficient, and the officers like it the best because it literally takes just a few seconds. I can take the cord and plug this into my mobile data computer, but it takes a little bit long because I have to wait for the boot up or boot down. Or what I could do is just record all my recordings, go back to the station, plug it into a desktop, but then I have to go through each one by one, right, and go, oh, what was that one? Oh yeah, and then associate the case number. So to do it as you go on your smartphone, and again, nothing is stored in your phone, right? So it doesn't cost you data time or anything like that. It's so much easier that that's what everybody jumps on board with.
Also, you mentioned that there's a recording of what IP addresses had viewed. Does that include from the phone prior to being uploaded?
No, it does not. The only time that audit trail takes effect is once it's input into evidence.com. As long as I have this recording on my camera, I can watch it as many times as I want on my phone, and there's no audit trail of that. It's only once it's uploaded.
So is that a concern then if someone comes up and says, hey, this officer treated me poorly, and perhaps he's viewed the video and said, well, this is exactly the way I saw it, maybe changing his or her story to match the video?
Well, officers are required to upload their recordings at the end of each shift, right? So I can't just keep it. But if it occurs during the shift, our view is facts are facts. The recording is what the recording is, right? That can't be changed. So
the reason I ask is I kind of, this group has spoken before about getting a testimony or so from an officer after a shooting or an incident where they maybe had time, they'd seen news footage, and they said, oh, well, maybe that's the way I remember it. Any concerns with that?
we are the camp that believes we want the most accurate work product from our officers as possible. We don't view police reports as a testing process to see what their memory was. What we want is the police report, the recordings and everything to reflect as accurately as possible what took place. So, our view is that the recording and everything will speak for itself, and we would expect that the same way I would use this as a tool, maybe I don't have to take notes and stuff like that, I should be reviewing that recording and writing my report so that the report coincides with what took place. Again, we want an accurate work product.
Steve, you want to touch on the policy that talks about the pause button, temporary prohibition of viewing certain video following certain incidents?
If an officer is involved in a shooting or any other deadly force, they're prohibited from looking at that video until approved by the chief or the deputy chief of police.
And sorry, still, I'll ask a couple of kept going, but so I know there's some studies that we're participating in, kind of specifically to privacy. So can a member of the community say, yeah, we've got something going on, but I don't want to film? You've mentioned a few places where that might occur, but is there a moment where an officer might override that and say, I need to have this recorded, or like say traffic stop?
Well, now that is a kind of a case-by-case basis, right? That's uncharted water. If I'm driving a car and I get stopped by an officer and I see he's wearing a recorder and I say, hey, I don't want you to record me. I mean, technically, they're in a public place, they have no expectation of privacy. The law supports that recording. Now, what I choose to do as the officer who's writing the ticket to try and make things as amiable as possible is going to be dependent upon the whole nature of the circumstances. That's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and lastly, also kind of going to privacy, cybersecurity. So I'm assuming TASER has pretty good systems in place, but we're seeing every day there's 21 million social security numbers. Someone in the community was videotapes. What are we doing to
Well,
ensure
that is a question that's a little bit out of my pay grade, but I'm gonna say that Taser, for them to be hacked and all of a sudden their police body cam videos be exposed would be pretty devastating to their business. So our position is we're trusting that Taser is gonna guard that because that's their business existence.
Do we have anyone, on the boards or any of our payrolls that is like an IT savvy person who reviews their methods, or who kind of checks with them, or is it just, we're gonna trust them, so obviously it would destroy the business, but, do we have any contingencies that speak of?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm certain there's something built into the contract that speaks to the requirements of security, everything that we do in terms of our agreements and food, something like that.
Mark, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just curious to know, and you might have touched on it, and maybe I missed it, but about timestamp. Say if a particular incident happens, will you be able to see in the corner a timestamp of when that particular incident? Also, if say there was an incident, then all of a sudden it stops, and there's almost like, you got to know there's a gap. Then all of a sudden maybe it's a little darker, and then all of a sudden it started up again. Is there a question about somebody stopping their camera in the middle of an incident and then starting the camera up again?
If they start and stop it, it's gonna show up as 2 recordings.
Okay, so then, say if
It's
if
gonna be
little-
extremely
if
obvious.
it's daylight and then night, it's conservative. So it's kind of like, the 18-minute gap, the Watergate thing. Also, the cloud system that we have now, to where you can basically store the Library of Congress up in the cloud, and then you can recall it. So therefore, your storage is not as much of an issue, because you can basically just stick everything and then recall it. Also, how many hands will be accessible to this particular, when you have it archived, and who's going to have access to that?
I mean, to view different recordings?
Right.
Okay, we have an administration and authorization system set up within the police department. So for example, I'm a patrol officer, I can only view my recordings. I can't go on to evidence.com and view deputy chief's recordings. If I'm a detective, I can view any recording, right? Because I'm working all kinds of different cases, different detectives might work on something for a period of time, that sort of thing. So there's different, depending on your position in the police department and your rank within the police department, you're granted certain authorizations. But again, all of that is in an extensive audit trail. Everybody that looks at it, that downloads it, that shares it, it's all recorded.
Right. So the person, whoever, and it should be only certain people, it can't be just anybody that walks in there.
And that's part of the record. So for example, you're prosecuting a case, and you'd say, I'd like to see the body-worn camera footage for this particular case. Not only do you get the recording, you get the audit trail that comes with it too, because that's a discoverable piece of evidence that's part of that. So the defense attorney gets to see, the defense attorney can question, hey, wait a minute, how come this was viewed by so-and-so and so-and-so, right? All of that is all transparent. It's all part of the permanent record. It can't be altered.
Thank you.
Do you mind taking a couple other questions?
Sure.
Donna?
I'm not sure if I heard right, but when you were talking about who would be wearing them and when they would be on, you said non-uniformed officer. It was not. Well, my question is, a non-uniformed officer that's not in the pre-planned, investigation. Just say he's patrolling, like a gang unit officer that's not uniformed and it's not pre-planned. He's just patrolling. What if he comes upon a situation where, there's an arrest, or he recognizes someone on the street and, something happens? Would he be required to turn it on, or is that a situation where he doesn't have to?
So let me make sure I understand your question. So a plainclothes officer, I'm wearing plain clothes, gang officer, driving around in a plain car, and all of a sudden I have to hop out and take some enforcement action?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't be expected to be wearing a body worn camera on me all the time and record that.
Okay. And then also, as far as, when someone could request their police report, the paper police report or online or whatever, would a recording also be available as part of the police report?
The way the process works now is if we receive again, all of our recordings are treated as evidence, right? So, the police report is one thing, but the recording, again, is evidence. So it'd be like, if I say, hey, I want a copy of my police report and I want the evidence that you booked into evidence, right? We wouldn't normally release that. What happens is that when we receive a request from the Orange County District Attorney's Office, of course, we give that to them and all the associated things. When we receive a request from any other agency, it comes to our records department. They forward that request to our city attorney's office at City Hall. They review the request, the applicable laws, then they send us back, yes, release it, or no, don't release it based on this exception.
Okay, so that would be like a public record request, not just,
Exactly.
like just say, I mean, it's not even like a criminal act, like a car crash or something, and they have to have it on just for whatever reason because they were called. I mean, sometimes people ask for the police report, for their insurance or something, and so that's something that could not be released unless
The request for that recording would have to go.
the city.
Exactly, the city
Okay.
over to the city attorney's office, and then they make the
Okay.
decision on that.
So no matter what, it would have to be that way, or, okay.
Because again, it's evidence, right? It's the same as anything that gets booked into the evidence locker.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
You had another question in the back?
How long do you store the recordings for?
A minimum of 2 years, a maximum of eternity.
Okay, so there's no telling, what helps you decide what to get rid of at the end of 2 years or so on?
What happens is each recording let's break it into 2 classes of recordings. Okay, so I work a shift and I make 10 contacts during the day. 5 are associated with cases, let's say, where I participate in an investigation or calls for service, where a report was taken. 5 are just, hey, can you give me the directions to the nearest Denny's, right? So those don't have case numbers associated with them. Those are what we call uncategorized recordings. What happens is those are stored for a period of 2 years, and then after 2 years, evidence.com sends a notice to the administrators. The following recordings are going to be deleted in 2 weeks or whatever the period is. Do you want to delete them? So it gives you a warning, right, that the uncategorized would be deleted. And then you can approve their deletion or you can say no. All the ones that are already categorized with police report numbers, those are all forwarded to respective detectives, right? Now the detective makes the determination, should they classify this as evidence or should they leave it in the 2-year period? So for example, let's suppose it's a police report of fireworks, right? A police report of fireworks incident. And that whole case is going to be adjudicated in a short period of time, right? Maybe the detective says, hey, this is going to be taken care of in a couple of weeks. We don't need to store this for 2 years, right? So they have that discretion. However, maybe it's assault and battery. Maybe it's a burglary. In that case, they take that recording, they reclassify it as evidence, and it stays there until a human being, another detective, says, no, okay, we're good to dispose this.
Or say anything that is possibly reopened.
Exactly.
For example.
Right, unsolved crimes, exactly.
Okay, so is TASER responsible for the recorded phone conversations as well to the department and from the department?
I don't know who manages that for us. Do you know that?
No, it's not TASER.
Yeah, it's not TASER. It's not part of this contract.
So you can't answer any of those questions.
But so, for example, like if you call the police department, it's on a recorded line. Who keeps and maintains that?
We store the incoming phone calls. The police department does.
For how much,
Okay, do
how
they
much
have-
time?
It's the same two-year period unless it becomes evidence. that it's
Same
longer.
basic rules? Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Lieutenant, I have one more, just if you don't mind. You mentioned a minute ago that the officer would not be allowed to review the recording in a police shooting context without the approval of the chief or the deputy chief. sorts of considerations would be, used to determine whether or not the officer should be allowed to review the recording?
Perfect person to answer that question.
That's a good question. That was a clause we inserted in the policy. We just wanted to be the first ones to view the incident. And then there could be cases, there could be incidents where it is on its face completely inappropriate or potentially criminal or worse, where we would preclude the person from watching. There might be an incident. There might be an instance where we do not want the officer watching that video before he's interviewed or she's interviewed. That was the purpose.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of a catch, kind of a check and balance.
My first inclination was facts are facts, like the lieutenant was saying, but I could certainly understand that concern.
And Michael, to your question earlier about cybersecurity, the alternative to cloud would be we store it, and that comes with its own risks. We've been, there's been hacks on our system. There are people out there that really want to get into police databases. And so it's a balance.
Yeah, pick your best place.
I got a quick
I have a short question.
Okay, one word on it.
How much can you see in the camera? Is it like a regular cell phone, like that much? Or is it like, you could just see in a little circle and it's like focused directly at somebody, or is it bigger?
What TASER tried to do would be to mimic the perspective of the human eye, right? So if it's dark outside, really dark, and you can barely see it with your eye, you're not gonna see, you're gonna see pretty much the same thing with the camera. But it's not a tunnel vision. I can't remember
It's not like
degree.
panoramic or?
No, it's not that either. It's it has a little bit of a fisheye look to it, right?
180 degrees.
I like the way they're doing.
Is there another question, Bob?
Yeah, did we give up on the dash cameras now?
I don't know how far we've gone into examining the dash cams. I think that we're saying that this is going to be better for us.
The limitations of, everything has limitations. The dash camera is going to capture what's immediately in front of the police car. And it could be very probative, and it could be very good. We opted for investing in this because the majority of our contacts with the public happen inside of dwellings or apartments or buildings far away from the police car. So is that an option down the road to add that? It is. Again, it's about cost, cost benefit analysis. Our opinion is this is going to capture most of the contacts our officers are having. Not the majority. The majority of our operations is not in front of the police car. Like you see on some of the television shows that are state trooper related. That's everything they do involves a vehicle right in front of their police car. That makes more sense.
Body cameras have been around in different states, different police departments for quite a while. Is there any sort of consortium or group that attempts to take best demonstrated practices from all of the footage that's out there to provide general guidelines or additional information? Because I'm sure every instance has probably been captured at some point. And from a learning perspective, and how do we get better?
It's actually fairly new. I mean, we were the first in the county to have them. Rialto is a couple of years, maybe 18 months ahead of us. And it's just starting to spread across the country. So that kind of critical mass isn't there yet. It's actually really relatively new.
It's rolling fast. So, I mean, if you Google police body cam studies, there are different institutions, foundations, universities, and research centers that are doing all kind of research, but there's no master one governing body that's funneling all those out yet.
If I can add just a response to that. One of the reasons we discussed quite a bit about where officers are wearing it is we have had the opportunity to see some of the limitations as well. So here they put their hands up, all you see is forearm. Different things, if it's on the belt, you see a lot of stomach until they get up and they're out in the open. So there certainly are limitations. But I think to your point is it's recording something, and that's better than nothing.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, because if it's just like a fisheye, could they like cover it somehow while, you know, they have their arm raised and you can't see anything?
That can happen, but we're learning how to use them as well, right? So in any police contact, there's kind of like two phases of the contact. There's the one phase where it's almost like a make it safe phase, where the officers kind of get a feel for doing what's to where they feel comfortable. And then there's the investigative phase, right? Where the danger level is way down, and now they're in the process of collecting evidence. It's this phase here, remember, these are evidence collection tools so it's this phase here that we're really trying to maximize. The prior phase, you're gonna get a lot of forearms and some stomachs and things like that, and steering wheels. But this phase here is where we're saying is the benefit.